Well, Governor Newsom's congressional redistricting plan could be heading to the California Supreme Court. The Dillon Law Group and California Republican leaders announcing this new legal challenge to the November ballot measure to redraw district lines to favor Democrats. They say that state legislative leaders violated several provisions of the state constitution, including a 30-day review of bills and the right to independent redistricting.
That is exactly why the voters of California have in their constitution that redistricting is something that must be done by the Redistricting Commission, and it cannot be done for partisan ends.
Now, the state Supreme Court rejected an effort by Republicans just last week to try to stop the redistricting effort just before it passed through the state legislature.
All right, let's get some more perspective now and bring in Professor David McCuan, chair of the Political Science Department at Sonoma State University, joining us here in the studio. Good to see you in person.
Nice to see you both.
Yeah, so we have now another legal challenge from Republicans to the Democrats' redistricting plan here. That lawsuit last week, as Heather just said, it was shot down almost immediately by the state Supreme Court. What is going to be different about this new legal challenge by Republicans?
All right, so a usual stage of the ballot measure process involves adjudication, kind of pre-adjudication, going to court. You do the same thing if the ballot measure passes later on. But in this latest filing, they do two things. One is they talk about the single subject rule, that a ballot measure is supposed to only deal with one subject. So if you take something like taxes, for example, it deals with all of government. That's hard to have single subject rule. The other component to this, maybe the more important component, beyond single subject, where the courts have been pretty permissive about what goes on, that second component is they engaged in redistricting, right? They have the maps before they actually went to the voters and the ballot and asked to redo or undo what the Redistricting Commission does. So they're arguing that they leapt forward, and by leaping forward, they violated the state constitution. Those are the two major provisions, but you should expect additional adjudication efforts, additional lawsuits to try to stop this train that's headed for the ballot in early November.
Yeah, okay, so you talk about additional lawsuits. Just today, President Trump saying that the Department of Justice was going to take legal action against California. Governor Newsom saying, bring it.
Right.
So where do we think this potential federal lawsuit will go? Does it have any legs?
All right, so you should expect the DOJ, which is a soulmate with the White House, to continue to move forward on a number of different lawsuits. What they'll do is they'll talk about the Equal Protection Clause, or Equal Protection and Due Process Clauses of the 14th Amendment. By doing that, they're going to say that, look, you're violating the rights, even of the minority of citizens, say Republicans, here in this process. They'll continue to push this forward. They should be able to get a hearing in federal court. It'll take a little bit longer in this process, but what it really signals is the political here, the amount of dollars that potentially could come into this race from Trump and his like-minded allies. So this is far beyond California, and that's a lesson for additional states.
Yeah, this is going to be a nationwide fight. So you have, I mean, the escalating legal fight obviously has huge implications for the political fight, and how much money is going to come into this fight. What does it mean, do you think, in terms of the dollars that are poured in on both sides of this thing?
All right, so you pay attention to the ratio of yes versus no. It's harder to get a ballot measure passed. And the yes side, you're going to have to spend at least $100 million. You probably need to spend north of that, 150, 200 million. And the no side needs to spend 2.5 times, very precise number, what the yes side spends. And then as they do that, they don't spend any more. So there's a tipping point at some point. So if you spend $100 million, she needs to spend $250 million. Now you're at $350 million. Then you have to administer the actual ballot. Now you're at $500 million. That's potentially the upper limit of what we're looking at here.
That's wild.
It is wild. When you think about it, though, I think I read 6.2 million just in the first week supporting Governor Newsom's effort here. And we were talking in the newsroom that some folks have already received some of the mailings, support for the plan and those against it.
Right. And if you look at those mailers, there's been 3 mailers that have gone out. Others are planned. They're targeting different segments of voters, regular habitual female voters, no party preference voters, the purple people, if you will, and then also others. And as you have more money, you can open up your target for where to send the mail and what media to run. That also, remember, the consultants get a cut of everything, every piece of mail and every commercial. And as a result, that raises the stakes of the arms race further escalating what's going on for this kind of nuclear thing that goes back and forth.
Yeah.
Let me get your take on something that the governor said late last week. He said that he had gone to meet with former Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, who, as we know, was the one who pushed the independent redistricting commission here in California and opposes abandoning that commission here right now, even for what Democrats argue is this emergency situation. What do you imagine was going on in that meeting? What do you think Governor Newsom's message was to the former governor?
All right, other than the both of them looking in the mirror for how beautiful they are, right?
Yes.
Other than that component, they're going to talk about, look, can you not raise money? You can talk about this, but not necessarily go out and raise lots of dollars. And it puts in a little difficult position because he's walked away from Donald Trump, particularly on climate change and issues like this, and his divisiveness. And Arnold is someone who doesn't want to play a role of being with Donald Trump, but also somewhat of a spoiler for this legacy measure of his. And just as a reminder for your viewers, you know, those measures, when they were put before the voters to show you how hard it is to get a yes vote, they barely passed by voters. And that very slim passage has kind of been lost in the history of this. What Arnold wanted was to see more moderate Republicans elected statewide, and that hasn't happened. In fact, there hasn't been a Republican statewide office holder in California constitutional office since Arnold was governor in 2005, 2006. So it's been a long time, but it also shows that Gavin Newsom is willing to go anywhere to talk to anyone about this, whether that's a MAGA podcaster in Tennessee or whether that's going to be Arnold Schwarzenegger. He'll be around early and often, because this is about the presidential ambitions of 2028.
Yeah, but when you talk about Newsom's strategy, do you think that it will, in fact, be productive? Do you think that Arnold Schwarzenegger will step back? Because I was hearing that already they are raising a substantial amount of money.
They should raise a substantial amount of money. They've known this is going to go to the ballot, and so therefore there's going to be a lot of pressure on Newsom and Democrats to put up to do this, and in a national effort. That means you're going to have Nancy Pelosi's Rolodex, you're going to have Hakeem Jeffries' Rolodex, not that people know what a Rolodex is, but you're going to have that kind of component, and that will raise money. It is a risky strategy, because if you're a blue state governor who can't deliver a blue vote, it's a problem. But their internal polling shows that they're right on the mark or a little bit ahead if they frame this as a referendum on Donald Trump and draw out their voters. Then they're in a strong position.
But in terms of the strategy of talking with Newsom, do you think he'll be, of talking with Schwarzenegger, do you think he'll be persuasive enough? Because I was reading that Schwarzenegger is sort of leading the fundraising effort and has already been quite successful in that.
He will be quite successful in that, and we will see him out on a trail. Now, one key component to this is if we move closer to the vote, if they think they're losing, does he disappear the last 2 weeks, the last 10 days? And the money is held back. If that happens, that means they're holding money for the legal challenge after passage on November 4th.
All right. We appreciate you coming in to break it all down. David McCuan, Sonoma State University. Thank you.
Yeah, I can just picture Governor Newsom and Arnold Schwarzenegger staring at themselves in the mirror. We'll leave the audience with that image. Yeah, thanks so much, David. Appreciate it.